JT, let's talk about leadership, man. You have a ton of education, like advanced education in leadership development, not only as a leader in the government or in the military, but you are also highly educated in it. And we were talking in our last segment about what you read and how well read you are, and that you're constantly educating yourself. I mean, you're in a doctorate program now, like you don't have enough things going on in your life. But what's the difference that you've seen in your transition between leadership traits of what we learned, what we had in the military as special agents, and then what do you see in the private sector? Goods, bads, let's be frank here, and talk about it.
Well, obviously, I think in the military, right, and I think probably even in the government, I don't want to cast sort of aspersions or wide nets over every leader, right? But I think within the military and definitely the U.S. government, what you probably see is a sort of more what I'll use this term. I hope it's not perceived wrongly, but more dictatorial, right? Definitely more
Top down
and hierarchical, right? Like, and so very militaristic, if you will, type of leadership. I think what I would say from our experience, in OSI, sort of aside from the general military, if you will, is there was definitely, because of our mission, I do think that we probably had more exposure to different types of leadership styles, right? So, because the organization was responsible for everything from criminal investigations to EP to, combat, right? And like sourcing, foreign nationals to do your bid, if you will, during combat operations. I mean, so we have that experience, I think. And so it was probably a little bit broader than your normal military person, right? Run of the mill, if you will, if I could use that term. But so I would say that within the government, it just tends to be more direct, right? More authoritative, more than anything, right?
Much more clear, right? I mean, there are clear lines. The more brass you have on the collar, you're in charge of more stuff.
Yeah,
the more stripes you have on your sleeve.
Rank has its privileges, right?
That's right.
And then, I mean, you see it carry over into, government service as well, right? I mean, if you're a GS-15 or a SES, I mean, everybody knows what that means, right? Over a GS-7, 9, 11, all the way up, right? What I would say, and I'll use this sort of as a transition if I can, Scott, is that what helped me, man, was when I left the military, I actually worked for although still government organization, I worked for an organization that was primarily civilian, right? Mm-hmm. And so while there were a large portion of veterans or individuals with previous military experience that understood that, they understood that we were also still working for the military department, right? It was just a different culture, right? Because we didn't have any military individuals within our rank, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. And so that actually was a good transition for me in learning how to deal with just a regular civilian workforce. Obviously well, let me say this before I talk a little bit about the private sector. Really, what that helped me really concretize, if you will, was my leadership philosophy, right? Mm-hmm. In that I don't believe leadership is a position, right? Like that is my philosophy. We're all leaders. Right. It just depends what kind of leader you are, right? So I don't care if you're the janitor or the CEO. Like we're all responsible for some type of job, some task. You're responsible for yourself, right, in that position. And so how you lead yourself speaks volumes over how you lead the organization or try to lead the organization or a team, right? And so to be honest with you, so you mentioned, I just love leadership. At the core of it, I think what I love about it, what I've learned over the years is that leadership is really just about people, man, and how you treat people, And so what I've seen in the private sector thus far is probably to be honest with you, it's no different than the military. You have good leaders, you have bad leaders. I will say that definitely having military experience, right, having spent time in combat, in those different types of situations where you have to make, risk-based decisions, I think especially in our industry, becomes very critical, right? In this and highly sought after skill, right,
Mm.
within the private sector. Because in the private sector, where individuals are looking for security professionals, they want to know that the minute there's some type of security incident, you have the experience to lean on to make that decision. And so, I love leadership, man. I love people. I think at the core of it, that's for me, that's what it's really about, to be honest with you. One of the biggest lessons, and really from a transition perspective, I would share this. I always share this if I can when I talk to folks, in interviews or just sharing right with others. Um, what I've realized over the years is that even in times where I've had individuals that have worked for me that wanted to leave or go work in a different area, what I've learned is it's much more valuable to help those individuals get after something they're passionate about than to force them or deny them opportunities and thinking that, well, I'm short on resources, it's going to take longer to replace this person, right? For me, over the years, what I've learned is I have I've just become sort of focused more on let me help individuals become who they want, whatever they're passionate about, right? Let me help them get after whatever it is they're passionate about.
Sure.
One of the things, and this may go a little long, so I apologize, but one of the things that I realized spending time in the military is that when we join the military, right, we're often very young. We're 18, 19, 20 years old, right? Whether you're enlisted or officer, right? And you're at a point in your time, although um, you're an adult and you're obviously responsible for yourself and making decisions, right? I don't think we really understand what it is we're passionate about at that age, right? And
Mhm.
so you could end up in a career, you know, right? You could end up. I started out in the military as a SIGINT analyst, something I was not at all passionate about. You know what I'm saying? Had OSI not come and recruited me, I would have been stuck in that career for 10 or 15 years, right? So what
Mm.
happens at that 10 or 15 year mark? Well, now my resume only speaks to something that I'm have no passion whatsoever in,
Mm.
but I have to put food on the table. So now I have to go get a job doing something I'm not passionate about, right? And so the cycle is just it's horrid because now I'm JT Mendoza, the guy who's a poor performer, doesn't do anything, right? But it's because I'm not passionate about doing this. And so I think as leaders, again, we're all leaders, right? But if you happen to be in a position where you can impact somebody's life or somebody's career, the advice I would give or what I would point out is help your people identify what they're passionate about, and then two, help them get there. Maybe it's not working for you. Maybe it's working for another organization. Maybe it's working for another leader within your organization, right? What I would say, though, from experience, is that those people will never forget you. They will never forget how you helped them get to a place where they were happy.
Yeah, my greatest, some of my most proud things that I've done in my career are not things that I did. it's it's the folks that I helped on a daily basis remove obstacles, and I
Right.
don't like to say that I managed them, but like because they're people, and I wanted to know what do you want to do. I've had security folks that wanted to get into law enforcement. Did I look down on them because they were trying to leave our organization? Not at all.
Right.
We have a little inside joke that I always say. When they leave our organization, I always tell them that they're dead to me, but that's a joke. I'm totally kidding. I am so proud of them because they've to your point, they found what they're passionate about and they went and they achieved it. And I agree with you. I think our goal is as leaders, because we are all leaders. You're right, is to remove those obstacles and empower those folks to do good things. And I think as long as we're doing that, we're doing the right thing. And I get this sense, I'll say it more bluntly, I think, than you did. You were much more eloquent, but that's not the same in the military. Not the same in government. It's, hey, I hired you to turn wrenches, or I hired you to build this thing. Go do that, and don't ask, don't dream, don't. This is as far as you're going to go, and everything else is not my job, not my problem. But I think in the private sector, there's a, a an understanding that, or an expectation that you'll be helping them grow as a person. That's what I would say would be something different. What do you think about, because you are studying leadership currently. What do you think about the future generation? How do they want to be led? The folks,
Man,
whether they're transitioners coming out of the military, but they're
yeah,
younger.
it's complex, right? I think it's again what I often try to do, and there was a point in my career where I actually spent a joint duty assignment at FBI headquarters, and the leaders that I got to work for there, who I'd like to mention because they were outstanding leaders, Randy Coleman, who's currently the chief security officer at Caterpillar, and
Hmm.
Sandy Cable, who's still serving with the FBI. I mean, I would follow these guys anywhere, honestly, right? They were that just the level of leadership from those two individuals, man. I could be on here for an hour just talking about them because I absolutely love them to death. Um, but we used to talk a lot about the upcoming generation, right? During my time there, they had just introduced sort of some of these studies about the millennial generation and how to work with the millennial generation, how to treat these individuals. And so when we would go to lunch, we'd have these real in-depth conversations about studies by Harvard, studies by Carnegie Mellon, right? I mean everybody, Yale, right? Everyone. And what we would always come back to, Scott, and I think you'll appreciate this, right? Sort of being a security professional, law enforcement professional, right? What we ultimately sort of agreed on was you got to treat everybody differently. You got to treat everybody. You have to meet people where they're at, and you
Hmm.
have to treat
And
everybody.
that's all different.
And it's all different,
Ah,
right? You
I
could be a
see.
boomer, and and
Yeah.
and and like sort of maybe you get bored. So I get bored easily, right? If I've heard people tell me like, dude, you act like a millennial sometimes, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, so does that mean, I'm not a millennial by categorization, right? But instead of dumping me into that category, treat me, the way I perform best or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing I will share is this, and there's one study Boston University put out that I thought was very, very interesting when it did a comparative analysis across the different generations, right? And what they shared was that if you think about the older generation in the sense of like, probably right before our generation, is that most individuals, and probably into the beginning of our generation, Scott, most of these individuals were looking for stability. They were looking for
Yes.
work, right?
Yeah.
Right after the Great Wars, our
Yeah.
grandparents, they were looking for organizations and stability after the Depression, right? Something that would put food on the table, right?
Yeah. So right.
So, so for them, it was more about stability and taking care of your family than action. So it was more about, and I'm sort of I'm a nut for sort of using uh, words that start with the same letter, if you will, right? So for them, it was more about provision, right?
Mm.
Provision. How do I provide for myself, for my family?
Mm.
The younger generation, this study showed that they were more about passion. So what are they passionate about? So no longer are they really worried. We've sort of inculcated this younger generation in don't get married young, go out, experience the world, travel, right? Wait till you're in your mid 30s before you decide to get married, right? And so those individuals have had an opportunity. Those who can, right, go to college, experience college life, not get married at a sort of younger age, if you will, and they have found, we were just talking about, right, trying to help your people find out what they're passionate about. On
Mm.
their own, they have found out what they're passionate about.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
at the core, they're driven by that,
Mm.
right? And so I think the way, again, what I would say, using that as an example, is that I would just lead them by trying to continue to guide them into whatever they're passionate about.
Mm.
And again, if that means that you have to identify projects that help them stay passionate, or if they decide to leave your organization, right, maybe sooner than maybe somebody who's more focused on provision, right?
Mm. Mm.
What I will say is, again, I think it just depends on your upbringing, right? It depends on who you are, right? You could have an individual who's younger, who maybe didn't is comes from meager beginnings like I did, and is more focused on stability and provision, right? So I don't like to cast sort of everybody into buckets, if you will. But I would say that, right? I guess at a broader sense, if you're looking, the one study I really liked was that Boston University study and the difference between provision and passion.
That's great, and we'll leave it there. JT, this has been an amazing conversation about leadership and your transition story, and I really appreciate talking with you. As or as people that have been around us know, we love getting together and chewing dirt and it's just great to hear you talk about something I think you're passionate about,
Yeah.
which is leadership, and it really resonates, and it's going to resonate with people watching this. It's going to help them. You are a leader here in this industry, and so I'm glad we could showcase this, and your message is so powerful and so positive. I really appreciate you being on here, brother.
Well,
Thank you
thanks
very
for
much
having me,
for
man.
being here.
Thank you. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right. So stay tuned. We got more great guests coming up in the near future. Connect with JT if you haven't already. Make sure you're commenting and you're sharing this with your partners, because it's really imperative that we have people transition in a positive way, and that they're all leaders. Like JT says, we're all leaders. So thanks, JT. Appreciate it, buddy.